Dune Awakening gets a brand new beta weekend starting on May 9th. I fortunately already got a chance to play through this build for roughly 3 weeks last month, which is why I wanted to go over some of the biggest things you should do right away to enhance your journey. This build gets access to roughly the first 20 to 25 hours of gameplay, a portion of Act 1 of the main campaign, and the 2 starting regions of Haga Basin South and the Vermilius Gap. Still, there's lots of content here, so without further ado, let's check it all out. But let's get started with the character creator because we kinda have a couple of options here that are rather important. The first one relating to our choice of starting class. In this case, we get to choose between Mentat, Trooper, Acolyte, and the Swordmaster. And even though in the full game, this is not going to matter as much because we're going to get access to all of the classes anyway via skill mentors, in the beta, because of its limited access to only the first couple of starting zones, we aren't going to see all of them. So let me break down every single one of them for you. So Trooper is the first one. Typically, I avoid this simply because literally it's one of the first skill lines you can unlock from one of the first outposts in the game. So you can go ahead and ignore this for now, but even if you do pick it, it's a very strong option to have. It gives you access to the Shigawire Claw right away, which is amazing for traversal. Plus, you can combine it for some insane verticality with some of the anti-gravity abilities that you're going to eventually unlock. Next one is the Mentat. This is typically the one I went with because you don't find other skill masters for it, at least as far as I was able to tell. And it starts with the Sentinel, which is a very strong ability. You basically summon and deploy a drone that essentially one-shots targets. And in the case of the bosses or tougher enemies, it's 2-3 shots at max, even with shields. So very strong through and through, and typically that's what I picked. Then we have the Acolyte. This starts with Voice Compel. This is going to cause enemies, well, force enemies to get to your position. But I found that the AI aggroes you from so far away anyway that I'm not sure this ability is going to be that useful unless you want to go for some of the other skills in its skill line. And then finally, there's the Swordmaster, which comes with the Knee Charge, a very potent ability since we do fight a lot of shielded enemies, but because I found the melee combat so janky in this game, this was another one of those classes I was kinda avoiding in the early stages. You can still go with this if you want to test out some of the melee capabilities of this game. Your only other significant option over here is if you want to start with a locked or unlocked research menu, and just like how the game does, I also recommend you start with the locked version. This is going to give you a much more curated experience. You're going to only get to unlock extra technologies as you progress in the main story, but that doesn't take too long and it does a much better job at teaching you the basics of the game. For the unlocked version, I mostly recommend that for veterans, advanced players who already know the basics and which technologies to prioritize. Now, once you are done with the tutorial, you're going to start right here in Haga Basin South. The exact spawn point will be slightly randomized for each player, but roughly everybody should start very close to roughly the same spot. However, your first order of business should be right away to collect all of these resources right here. This includes plant fibers, as we need this to craft armor, salvage metal to craft extra bullets and some of the initial base technologies, granite, as we're going to eventually need to build our base, and copper ore, as we're going to eventually refine this into stuff like better weapons, better gear, even vehicles, and more advanced base technologies. I would say roughly 200 to 300 of each should be more than enough for everything, and you should be capable of carrying the majority of these even in your own inventory, as you do have enough capacity and weight for it. Which brings us to number 4, how to deal with the harsh environments of Arrakis, because there are many dangers lurking around, and the biggest of them all is literally right above you. It's the sun itself. If you stay for too long out in the sun, this is going to increase that sunstroke meter, and if that reaches high enough levels, you're going to see a drastic reduction in your hydration levels. And hydration is one of the most important resources that you constantly have to manage in Dune Awakening, and you do so by finding sources of water, and there are quite a few of them. You can hydrate yourself from some of these dew flowers if you're in a pinch, but if you want something a bit more reliable, you can either steal water from sources that others have stored or by distilling the very blood of your enemies. There are technologies that you can eventually unlock that do just that, so more on that in just a little bit. In the meantime, just stick to shade and remember that nighttime is one of your biggest friends. Then we have the sandworm. This is your next biggest threat, and if you adventure yourself too far into the open desert and especially cause way too many vibrations, it won't take too long before you attract the sandworm's attention, even if you are on foot. So you will see that by the fact that this threat meter will turn from yellow all the way to red as you cause more vibrations. And of course, different vehicles and different powers will cause different levels of vibration. But it won't take too long after it notices you to emerge from the ground, and initially it will emerge somewhere in the distance. It won't actually start chasing you just yet. Instead, it's going to do a little bit of scouting for a couple of seconds, and if you cause even more vibrations at this stage, then it's going to start its pursuit. And if you see that happening, immediately go to cover. Anything that's close to rocks or any mountains or mountain ranges, just don't linger in the open desert, because trust me, there's absolutely nothing that can outrun this beast at this stage in the game. Even with a sandbike, you're not going to be fast enough to actually get away from it. It's going to eat you with the bike at the same time. And if you get eaten by a sandworm, you're going to lose everything in your inventory on that character, which almost will reset you all the way back to start. So just be careful about that. Another big one are sandstorms. These are highly important because they can damage literally everything, including your character, your vehicles left out in the open, and even your bases if they are not protected by a force field. So typically you're going to get an alert 1 or 2 minutes before they move in your sector, which is why you're going to want to go ahead and immediately seek shelter for the next couple of minutes, either in one of your protected bases or inside of a cave. But be careful if you're out in the open and wait out that 1 to 2 minute timer, because sometimes you may be at its precise point of spawn, like how it was in this case, and it caused that storm to immediately appear. Normally it moves on the map in real time, so you have some time to react to it, but if you are in that specific location, it can definitely wreck you. And then finally we have the patrol ships, especially present in between desert zones and more active during the nighttime, but if you are caught in their sight, they will immediately lock you in place with a force field for like 10 to 15 seconds and also dispatch a number of troops against you. And early on, these troops can be quite difficult because you are not well equipped, but later on you can easily take them down quickly. Also, luckily the force field despawns after the troops drop in, so for example, if you get trapped while on your vehicle, you don't have to leave it behind, just wait for the shield to despawn and then just plan your escape. It shouldn't take too long. Obviously, there are many other dangers in the second map. I just don't want to spoil them. For now, this is what you should care about. From this point on, your next point of interest is to set up your base. And like I said before, I have a point of pain with the bases over here. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but since the game kind of encourages you to scrap them all the time and remake them in different locations, if you don't want to waste time doing that, just pick a middle point that is close enough to all major objectives early on. And I would say that would be precisely the middle or the center of the Haga Basin South map over here. This way you're close both to the main story objective nearby, also to some of the nearby facilities, as well as the Griffin outpost further northwest. So in this case, that's typically where I would set it. From this point on, just follow the main story as usual. It teaches you very well about the basics of survival on Arrakis and also progressively unlocks better and more useful technologies to prepare you for the challenges ahead. And this is what you're going to be doing up until the game points you towards the Griffin trade post here further northwest, typically of where you spawned. And this location is one of the first hubs that you get to encounter, with a ton of very good contracts with some amazing rewards you really want to go ahead and grab, as well as one of those trainer NPCs that will unlock one of your first extra skill lines. On your way there, whatever you do, just make sure that you grab about 40 copper, and also make sure you grab the micro sandwich fabric and EMF generators. If you don't have any at you, there's an Aaron's refuge over here just across the trade post that you can grab, as we're going to give these in for a special mission. Once you get inside of the trade post, you can go ahead and just follow the mission over here. You are going to have to talk to some NPCs, specifically the vendor in the area that will give you a special package, and you also have to grab an item from him, which can be very useful for hydration. Once you're done with that, head over to the contract board and get all of the contracts. More will spawn in just a little bit, but for now, get all of these 3 right here. and specifically the most important will be copper required, which is why I told you to have 40 copper ready at you, because we can go ahead and immediately complete this. However, this is also part of a longer chain of contracts, at the end of which you're going to get some very powerful upgrades, including some MK2 upgrades for your Sandbike for absolutely free. So for now, I'm going to go ahead, give it in, and then grab the next contract that opens up in the chain, which is called Wrecking Crew. For this, we're going to need to raid the wreck of Alcyon, which is a crashed ship that's overrun by bandits, and there are many of them in the desert, but they are some of the most lucrative as they provide exclusive rewards and some of the best technologies we need to grab. On the way though, we are going to raid another facility, which is the first testing site, a little bit west from it. It's going to be on the way, so there's absolutely no reason to not get this there, since it's also part of another contract that we can eventually retroactively complete. However, before we actually leave, there's one more thing I'm going to go ahead and grab, and that's going to be from this NPC called Gavuri. This is, like I said, our very first skill trainer, which is going to unlock that Trooper skill line for us, and we only need to take down 3 targets for him, so we're gonna go ahead and grab it, as that's also going to be on the way. And from this point on, we're now going to make our way back east to complete these contracts. And like I said, we already have the Imperial testing station number 2 on the way anyway, so might as well go ahead and finish it now. This is good for 2 reasons. First, we're going to eventually have some contracts that need us to go here and retrieve some items anyway, so we can just get them now. And second of all, they also provide components needed to craft vehicles, specifically advanced servworks and also the particle capacitors. But this whole place is filled to the brim with loot. So you can top up on water and max it out. You can top up on bullets and other crafting materials, even get some extra gear over there like shields and whatnot that are very useful. You just have to make sure that you deal with the enemies, as there are quite a few of them. So the first item we need for one of the contracts is going to be right here at the circular staircase that leads downwards. But before you actually go downwards, take care of the enemies and go in the singular room here in the back. In one of the containers here, you should find the automated poison snooper, which is going to be important for one of the future contracts. Before you leave, also make sure that you grab the Sandbike Tread MK1 from one of these lockers, as we can actually give this in for one of the contracts later on. Once you do that, grab everything else in the vicinity and make your way down the circular stairs in the area below, again collecting everything on the way as much as you can. Now, once you go into the next stage of the facility, you're going to reach this area, and there are 2 important items we need to collect over here. One is going to be downwards these stairs to your left, and inside of the next room, you should see a blue wristband, which is important for that locked door that we had at the beginning of the facility, which is going to give us even more rewards. Once you grabbed everything, go back into the main area once again, backtracking your steps. In this case, you should see this yellow bright light in the background that is fully interactable. So if you go ahead and press the button, this should reveal a secret room. Inside, there's even more loot for you to collect, including this Sandbike engine that's going to be useful for one of those contracts yet again. But especially pay attention to the table in the middle. One of the containers over here will give you the Imperial testing station records, which is needed for another contract. Once again, make sure you don't leave anything behind, and now you're ready to progress to the final area in which we can get the final item. So here, there's going to be a quick boss fight that you can take down, but once you do that, make sure that you don't forget to check out the container close to its spawn point. This is going to give you one final set of contract rewards, which is the mysterious vials. We will need this to eventually unlock the Planetologist skill line a little bit later. And now we're pretty much almost ready to leave. We just have 2 more rooms to visit. One is going to be the one after we defeated the boss. This is going to hold our most unique reward, which is this unique schematic for an Emperor's Wings MK1 that will give us levitation in just a little bit. And of course, some other crafting materials, including the very useful spice-infused copper dust. In fact, this facility is one of the best sources for spice-infused copper dust, as many unique schematics require that. From this point on, the only other room remaining is the blue one. As we got the blue wristband, we can go at the start of the facility and finally go inside. You're going to find more servworks and other crafting components, and also useful items to craft your vehicle. From this point on, we're now also ready to complete and finish the wrecking crew. So we're going to make our way towards the wreck of the Alcyon and just defeat all the enemies inside. But also make sure that you check out every single location over here. Specifically because you are going to need to grab some of these plasteel microfibers that you really need for the next section, as we do need to progress into the main story. So these are going to come in limited amounts. Alternatively, you can buy more of these plasteel plates and fibers, for example, from the vendor back at the Griffin trade post. But in the meantime, the other container here, important also for a contract, will be pretty much in the upper deck. So if you go here in the front of some of these screens, you should see another container, and this is going to give you the Heltzman amplifier, which you're going to need for this current contract. Grab it, as well as everything else that you may find. And from this point on, you can progress into the upper section, again dealing with any enemy that you may find, all the way until you unlock the final chest. Again, this is another boss chest, so you do get a unique weapon from it, and of course you also get more of that dust that we talked about before. And now, with all of that plasteel and microfibers that you got, as well as the unique components, you're ready to go back at your base and craft them. So let me show you what you actually get. Besides the green armor that the game already points you to craft and equip, the other thing you're going to get are these two items right here. One is the Emperor's Wings MK1. So this is a very good utility tool that, once you equip, basically gives you sort of a levitation. So when you jump, if you hold down the space button, this is going to give you these anti-gravity effects. And like I said before, this is going to couple really well with the grip claw from the Trooper that basically lets you now jump over obstacles much easier, because you can turn on the anti-gravity as you are in the middle of a jump claw. So that's going to let your character propel even further. The other one is going to be the very useful Kaleff Drinkler, which is basically a knife, but this is going to pretty much handle all of the blood extraction for you. So instead of having to craft blood extractors to do it manually against your enemies, you can just hit them with this knife instead, and that's going to automatically fill your blood containers. So refining them into water is going to be much easier than ever before. And now the next part of the story should bring you to your very first vehicle, which is to craft your very first Sandbike. And because we already got all of those advanced components from the testing facility, we no longer have to go over there. We can just combine those with copper ingots to craft our bike right away. Just make sure that you unlock that in the research menu. And you're going to need, of course, all of the components, the 3 threads, the PSU, the engine, frame, and the chassis. And once you have all of them available, you can go ahead and just assemble them with your assembly tool. And lo and behold, desert progression and traversal just became a lot easier. But one other thing that I recommend also unlocking is your vehicle backup tool. You really don't want to leave your Sandbike or any other vehicle out in the open, because sandstorms can destroy it. But with the vehicle backup tool, you can store them inside of that tool and summon or unsummon them whenever or wherever you want, as long as it's in the outdoors. And of course, assuming that there's nothing in their inventory. Also, I don't recommend unlocking or crafting any of the MK1 carry capacities, extra inventories, or for example the jet boosts, because you're going to unlock the MK2 versions for free in just a little bit by giving in all of these contracts we just got. But now that we have the Sandbike, the next part is going to be even easier, because now we can go ahead and also quickly finish the Proving Grounds, which will unlock that Trooper skill tree. So in this case, we just need to take down the 3 targets, which we're going to find around these caves further east in Haga Basin South. So one of them is going to be here at Kaleff Stand, another one at Shamal Tunnel, and finally the last one a little bit further south from that at the Edgeway Cavern. So simply going over there, in this case, dispatching my drone, literally 1-2 shots them, and then I can just progress. And from this point on, we can take our bike as well as all of these contracts all the way back at the Griffin trade post and give everything in. Starting, of course, with the skill trainer, which is now going to unlock that Trooper skill line for us, giving us access to that really cool grip claw, but other damage-related abilities in there as well. Since we finished Wrecking Crew, we can also give that in to progress further in that contract chain. We can also go ahead and give the Fremen finds over here, including, those 3 micro sandwich fabrics, as well as the EMF generators. We can also go ahead and give in the testing limits, because we pretty much got the automated poison snooper from that testing facility anyway, and the final one will basically be just giving in some of the extra components we got for vehicles anyway. For the other, we have already a thread that we got from the facilities as well, but we only need to craft another one to give to in, and that's going to fully complete our mission right now. And the chain quest is now completed, and this is basically what we're going to get from it. Essentially, we are going to get this really cool tool over here, which we can go ahead and use. This is very important because in the next area, we will now need to farm a new resource called iron, and this is going to let us get that right away without having to unlock anything in our skill line, and it's going to increase how much we get from existing yields from copper and granite. Besides that, we also get the MK2 inventory expansion slot as well as the boosters for the Sandbike. However, you can only have one at a time. The booster basically gives you quicker speed, so you can use it with shift, but I do recommend getting that inventory capacity for now if you want to put all of the excess materials in here, especially since you likely got hundreds of them and don't want to refarm again. This can be a good way of storing them, at least until you move everything to your next base in the second region. Now, there's only one other thing you can do in this area, and that's basically to get the Planetologist skill line. As you likely notice that there's a new contract over here on the board, or maybe several of them, one which is called Assistance Required. And guess what? This is going to bring you back to the same testing station number 2. But because we already finished it and got the vials from the final boss, instead of having to clear that once again, we can simply head over here at the top of it and give it to this guy. Simply go through the dialogues and then you can immediately report back to him that you already got the vials, which is going to unlock the new skill line. This is actually going to be very useful because it has a lot of options to increase the yields that you get from literally every type of farming that you do by a significant margin, by the way, plus some really cool anti-gravity skills that you can use either at your own advantage or to distract your enemies. And that basically concludes today's video. This is pretty much all you need to know. If there's anything else you want to know about the game, or if you have any other questions, let me know down below in the comments. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.